Abraham Lincoln, losing every election he ever had till he won the presidency.
You know, I actually have the feeling that my life hasn't started yet.
We all have two lives. The second one begins the day we realize that we only have one life.
Wow.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9, English news as it should be.
A very good morning. You're watching News 9 this Monday morning. I'm Karthik Malhotra. Well, the big story that we're tracking for you comes again from US President Donald Trump, who is seeking active support of NATO countries. He wants NATO to participate in the US-Israeli war with Iran. That's a big story which is unfolding. Also on the show, we will bring to you the prospects of the China summit likely being postponed. This comes in the wake of Chinese support sought in the escorting of shipments from the Strait of Hormuz. Well, top-level ministers have met in Paris, but it seems that Trump's visit to China could potentially be postponed. And coming up later on the show, markets likely to open on a positive gap-up note this morning, taking cues from Gift Nifty, despite Brent crude at over $104 a barrel. And finally on the show, Oscar, who are the winners and who are the potential dark horses emerging in the race for the Academy Awards. All this and more on this edition of Morning Brief at 9. You're watching Morning Brief at 9 this Monday morning. Here's a look at the headlines. Iran warns other countries not to get involved in its conflict with the United States and Israel after President Donald Trump urges allies to escort oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz, a request rejected already by Australia and Japan. US President Donald Trump warns of further attacks on Iran's vital oil export terminal at Kharg Island, saying he is not ready to negotiate an end to the conflict. A planned summit between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping could be delayed as Trump prioritizes Chinese support to reopen the Strait of Hormuz amid escalating oil prices due to the Iran conflict. U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright says Iran conflict could end within weeks. Oil supplies may rebound. Benjamin Netanyahu-led Israeli government clears $827 million worth of emergency military package amid intensifying Iran conflict. Netanyahu debunks death rumors with new video, says I am very much alive, shows his 5 fingers clearing in the air on conspiracy theories. But some on social media point out that this is an AI-generated video. Indian flag tanker carrying nearly 81,000 tons of crude oil sails safely from UAE's Fujairah port amid war tensions despite an attack on the oil terminal. LPG bookings fall to 77 lakh in India as government assures adequate fuel supplies. And one battle after another dominates the 98th Academy Awards with 6 wins, including Best Picture, while Michael B. Jordan clinches the Best Actor award on Hollywood's biggest night. Iran has warned other countries not to get involved in its conflict with the United States and Israel after US President Donald Trump urged allies to escort oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz, a request already denied by Australia and Japan. In a brief interview with the Financial Times, Trump said NATO could face a very bad future if US allies failed to help reopen the vital oil shipping route, that's the Strait of Hormuz. Now, Trump added that as the United States aided Ukraine in the war with Russia, he expects Europe to help Washington to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, whose closure has sent energy prices soaring around the world. Even this morning, Brent crude oil trading at about $104 a barrel. Now, the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway which connects major Gulf energy exporters to global markets, has effectively been shut since the US-Iran conflict began on the 28th of February. Now, Trump has called on countries including China, France, Japan, South Korea and the United Kingdom to send ships to escort tankers. But Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi warned other countries to refrain from actions that could further escalate the war. Meanwhile, Iran's new supreme leader Mojtaba Khamenei has vowed to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed as the conflict with the United States and Israel intensifies. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has threatened additional attacks on Iran's crucial oil export hub at Crude Island, saying he's not ready to negotiate a deal to end the conflict. The warning comes as US officials say they still expect the war to end within weeks, even as Tehran insists it remains stable and prepared to defend itself. Take a look.
U.S. President Donald Trump threatened more strikes on Iran's main oil export hub, Crude Island, over the weekend and said he was not ready to reach a deal to end the war, which has shut off the vital Strait of Hormuz and shaken up global energy markets. The U.S. on Sunday released this video showing what they say were strikes on Iran. Trump has said Iran wants to negotiate, but Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi on Sunday disputed that claim. Araghchi told CBS's Face the Nation that Iran was, quote, ready to defend ourselves for as long as it takes. In Tehran on Sunday, Reuters spoke with residents who had returned to their damaged homes after they were hit by U.S.-Israeli strikes on March 13th.
Well, no one was injured, and that alone is a comfort for us. God willing, the day will come when the force of justice overcomes evil. That alone encourages us.
Iran's Revolutionary Guards said it had fired more missiles and drone barrages at targets in Israel and U.S. military bases in the region, where Saudi Arabia said it had intercepted 10 attacks. An Israeli army spokesperson told the briefing that Israel will continue to act in both Iran and Lebanon until the objectives of its operations are achieved. In Lebanon, more than 800,000 people have fled their homes since Israel began an offensive in the country after the Lebanese Hezbollah group opened fire at Israel in support of its ally Iran on March 2nd. Some displaced Lebanese with no room left at shelters fastened a tarp over the back of a truck to get out of the rain. What should I ask for? I just want a shelter for me and the children, he says. U.S. officials responding to economic uncertainty over high oil prices predicted on Sunday that the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran would end within weeks and that a drop in energy costs would follow. Three sources told Reuters that Washington has brushed aside attempts by Middle Eastern allies to open talks.
Meanwhile, U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright has said the ongoing conflict involving the United States, Israel and Iran could come to an end within the next few weeks. Now, speaking to ABC, Chris Wright said he expects the war between the U.S. and Iran to wind down soon, possibly even earlier than anticipated. He added that once the fighting stops, global oil supplies are likely to rebound, which could help bring down energy prices. Now, Wright's remarks come at a time when global markets remain on edge, with investors worried that the conflict could disrupt oil supplies and push prices higher. Now, according to analysts, any easing of tensions in West Asia could help stabilize energy markets and reduce pressure on fuel costs worldwide. And French President Emmanuel Macron has urged Iran to halt attacks across the region as tensions escalate in the Gulf. In a post on X, Macron said he had asked Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian to immediately stop attacks carried out by Iran or its allied groups in countries such as Lebanon and Iraq. Now, the French leader also stressed that freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz must be restored as soon as possible. Emmanuel Macron additionally called on Tehran to release 2 French citizens currently imprisoned in Iran on espionage charges. France is working with partners to assemble a coalition to help secure the vital shipping route once the security situation stabilizes, while Britain is also discussing options with allies to protect maritime traffic in the region. And as the war between Israel and Iran enters its 3rd week, the escalating conflict is now forcing major emergency decisions in Tel Aviv. The government, led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has approved an additional emergency military spending package worth $827 million to boost defense preparedness as the fighting intensifies. According to Israeli media reports, the additional funds were cleared during a special cabinet consultation. The money will be used to purchase munitions, acquired advanced weapon systems and replenish combat stocks that have been used during the ongoing hostilities in Iran. Officials say the decision was driven by the scale and intensity of the conflict. Israeli forces are continuing military operations while simultaneously defending against repeated missile attacks from Iran. Since the war escalated at the end of February, Iran has launched hundreds of ballistic missiles towards Israel. While Israel's air defenses systems have intercepted the majority of those missiles, some strikes and falling debris have still resulted in casualties as well as damage. There have also been reports suggesting shortages in interceptor missiles. However, Israeli Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has rejected those claims, insisting that Israel's missile defense systems remain fully operational. Now, the emergency funds worth $827 million will come from Israel's recently approved $222 billion national budget, which is still awaiting final approval in the Israeli parliament, the Knesset. Interestingly, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has dismissed rumors circulating on social media claiming that he was dead. In a video posted on his official X account on Sunday, Netanyahu appeared relaxed as he is seen at a cafe outside Jerusalem and joked about the speculation. Now, holding up a cup of coffee, he said sarcastically, "I am dead for coffee." Now, Netanyahu also addressed online claims that his recent televised address was generated using artificial intelligence. Some social media users had pointed out that he appeared to have 6 fingers in the video. Now, responding to the speculation, the Israeli Prime Minister raised his hands towards the camera and joked, asking viewers if they wanted to count the number of fingers. Now, despite the light-hearted tone, Netanyahu used the opportunity to deliver a serious message to the public, urging Israelis to continue following safety instructions during rocket attacks. He praised the resilience of Israeli citizens, saying their determination gives strength to the government, the military and the Mossad intelligence agency. Netanyahu also said Israel is carrying out operations that cannot be disclosed publicly, adding that Israeli forces are striking Iran and Lebanon very hard. And moving on now, an Indian-flagged crude oil tanker has safely sailed out of UAE's Fujairah port despite an attack on the oil terminal, as the Indian government continues to closely monitor the escalating situation in West Asia. The vessel, Jack Ladki, carrying around 80,800 tons of Murban crude oil, departed from Fujairah and is currently bound for India. Authorities confirmed that all crew members on board are safe. Now, according to the government, the tanker was loaded with crude at the Fujairah single point mooring when the oil terminal in the area came under attack on March 14th. Now, despite the incident, the vessel successfully completed its loading and sailed out safely. Jack Ladki is now the 4th Indian-flagged vessel to exit the conflict-hit region without any damage. Meanwhile, 2 Indian-flag LPG carriers, Shivalik and Nanda Devi, also crossed the war-hit Strait of Hormuz on Saturday, carrying nearly 92,700 tons of LPG. Shivalik is expected to reach Mundra port in Gujarat, while Nanda Devi is scheduled to dock at Kandla port. Officials say Indian vessels and seafarers operating in the region remain safe, with maritime authorities closely tracking developments. At present, 22 Indian-flagged vessels with over 600 seafarers remain in the Persian Gulf region as the conflict continues to disrupt shipping routes, particularly through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, India, which imports a majority of its crude oil and massive shares of gas and LPG from West Asia, is working to ensure stable fuel supplies while also safeguarding the safety of Indian seafarers and maritime operations. Amid growing concerns over LPG crisis in the country in recent days, LPG refill bookings across India have declined, suggesting that panic buying may be easing. The government, meanwhile, continues to assure citizens that there is no shortage of petrol, diesel or cooking gas despite the ongoing West Asia conflict. The government said LPG bookings fell to around 77 lakh on Saturday, down from about 88.8 lakh bookings recorded on March 13th. Officials say the drop suggests that concerns over supply disruptions may be stabilizing. But at the same time, the share of online LPG bookings has increased to about 87%, up from 84% earlier. The government says this rise is due to campaigns by oil marketing companies encouraging digital bookings and discouraging people from visiting dealerships for panic purchases. Authorities have also reiterated that all domestic refiners are operating at high capacity and maintaining adequate crude oil inventories. All marketing companies have reported no tryouts at fuel stations or LPG distributorships, with supplies continuing normally across the country. Meanwhile, several states and union territories, including Delhi, Bihar, Haryana and Rajasthan, have stepped up enforcement to prevent hoarding and black marketing of LPG cylinders. Raids and inspections are also being conducted by officials of public sector oil companies to ensure smooth supply. The government has urged citizens not to panic buy, stressing that adequate stocks of fuel and LPG are available nationwide. And India's aviation safety regulator, the DGCA, or the Director General of Civil Aviation, has granted temporary relaxations in flight duty norms for Air India's long-haul operations as the airline takes longer routes due to airspace restrictions over West Asia. According to reports, Iranian and Iraqi airspace closures amid the ongoing regional conflict have forced Air India to reroute several flights to Europe and North America via Egypt, significantly increasing flying time. In response, the DGCA has temporarily relaxed pilot flight duty time limitations, or FTTL norms, until April 30th. Under the revised rules, the maximum flight time for certain long-haul flights operated with 2 pilots has been extended by 1.5 hours to 11 hours and 30 minutes, while the flight duty period has been increased by 1 hour and 45 minutes to 11 hours and 45 minutes. However, sources claim that some flight schedules may still exceed these relaxed limits. Authorities have also allowed an exemption from the usual 30-minute roster planning buffer requirement. The extended routes come as the escalating conflict continues to disrupt aviation corridors across West Asia, forcing airlines worldwide to adjust routes, reduce services, and in some cases make technical stops during ultra-long-haul flights. And with that, we will slip into a very short break. But when we come back on the other side, markets seem to be in a better mood despite the really skyrocketing Brent crude prices hovering at about $104 a barrel. Kranti Batini will be here to tell us what to expect in trading days ahead. All this and more on the other side of the break. You're watching Morning Brief at 9.
Someone to bring your vision into reality. When human vision meets artificial intelligence, storytelling enters new territory. 2 distinct categories: brand films, short films, evaluated by the best of the best. Seen by those who shape the industry. Rewarded with a 10 lakh rupee prize pool. Celebrated at What India Thinks Today, Delhi. AI Squared Awards, where artificial intelligence meets artistic imagination.
confirmed. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has been eliminated. But it was just not about Khamenei. It was also about the entire regime which the Americans wanted to take out.
Are the Iranians going to carry out their pledges, and are they going to continue with their attack?
Though Trump had said that the waves of attack would continue, but a new signal has come that there might be a small pause.
IRGC is likely to adopt lesser radical and more pragmatic approach to basically buy time so that the regime can survive.
There is much more than what is visible or to the naked eye.
Khamenei was killed because uranium enrichment and the Iranian desire to make a bomb.
That expertise is there. People know how to enrich it. There are infrastructure which can again be rebuilt.
Iran today is headless. There is transition, but conclusion is far away. The LPG shortage is now being felt across several cities in India. Our reporters travel across the country to bring you the ground reality.
It's impacting your and my kitchen.
Gas crisis hits kitchen fires. Restaurants and small businesses shutting down.
Very difficult because everything runs on LPG.
LPG cylinders are running short.
Supply shortage, hoarding or panic buying. What's the government doing to control the crisis?
So the question is whether India is prepared.
News9 ground reports.
Growing uncertainty over the availability of LPG in the national capital.
We are here at the ground. News9 will be tracking the problems of the people.
But the people that we spoke to on ground have a different story to tell.
Will be continuous coverage.
Continuous coverage on News9. In your interest. Welcome back. You're watching Morning Brief at 9. I'm Karthik Malhotra. Time now to look at stock market action across the world. Let's begin with the US, which closed on Friday fairly down, capping a turbulent week for global markets. Investors were upset due to sharp swings in crude oil prices as they tried to assess how the war with Iran could affect global energy supplies. The uncertainty has increased US market volatility, which investors closely watching geopolitical developments and their potential impact on inflation and growth outlook.
Wall Street's main indexes ended lower on Friday, with the Dow dropping about 0.25%, the S&P 500 shedding more than 0.5%, and the Nasdaq losing almost 1%. All three major indexes also logged weekly declines, and the small-cap Russell 2000 index closed at its lowest level of the year so far. Still, Nancy Tengler, CEO and Chief Investment Officer at Laffer Tengler Investments, said strong corporate fundamentals should keep this market trending higher in the wake of geopolitical strife.
I view this as an opportunity, as it always has been historically, but also because not only was earnings season excellent, that's backward looking, but guidance was remarkable and margins are at historic highs. So I think you want to be long this market, use this as an opportunity to switch around your portfolio, add to the leaders.
Stocks on the move included software maker Adobe, which slid 7.5% after the company's longtime CEO said he will leave his role once a successor is appointed, renewing worries over potential AI disruption. Shares of Meta Platforms fell nearly 4%, following a report that said the social media giant has postponed the release of its AI model Avocado to at least May. And shares of Ulta Beauty slumped more than 14% as rising costs deepened margin fears, with the company's new CEO flagging potential impact from global conflicts.
And these global conflicts are what are driving crude prices higher. In fact, crude price moved higher again on Monday, with Brent crude rising to about $105 a barrel, while U.S. benchmark West Texas Intermediate or WTI hovered around $99 a barrel. Oil has surged 40 to 50% since the United States and Israel launched strikes on Iran on February 28th. The jump comes as Gulf production cuts and stranded tankers tighten supplies, while the Strait of Hormuz, which normally carries around 20% of global oil and gas exports, remains effectively shut. Analysts warn the spike in energy costs could slow global growth and fuel inflation. U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright called the disruption short-term pain, saying the war could end within the next few weeks. Meanwhile, the International Energy Agency, or IEA, says the conflict is creating the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. And rising oil prices are creating some sort of tremors even on Asian financial markets. In fact, we saw all of last week stocks in Japan and South Korea tumble and stay in deep reds, with cuts actually hovering in the range of 6 to 7% before some bounce back. But even this morning, things aren't looking very pretty. In fact, Japan's benchmark Nikkei 225 is down about 0.75 percentage point. Meanwhile, even South Korea's Kospi is down about 1/5 percentage point. But slight relief coming in for Hang Seng, the benchmark index of Hong Kong, which is up more than 1% in trade this morning. Potentially, this could have something to do with Trump's meeting in China, which is now postponed effectively because China is not really ready yet to send its naval escort vessels to escort shipments through the Strait of Hormuz. Perhaps investors are seeing that positively. Meanwhile, Taiwan's TAIEX is also about 0.5 percentage point in trade this morning. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the Indian stock markets, which have opened pretty much flat this morning, slipping into red, bouncing back into green. But by all parameters, one can say that trade is absolutely flat this morning. Hardly any movement in the Nifty 50 or the Sensex. In fact, Sensex is up just about 50 odd points, still in the range of about 74,600 or so, well below that psychological 75,000 levels at this stage. It's about 12,000 points or so below its lifetime high. Meanwhile, Nifty 50 is also just about flat at about 23,160 odd levels. The pain in the small cap stocks is much deeper this morning. The Nifty Small Cap 100 Index is down almost 1%, in fact 0.93%. Meanwhile, volatility in the Indian stock markets, even though as a percentage it seems to have dipped, it still is fairly high, above that level of 21, in fact near the 22 level. Remember, in the early days of the conflict, the India VIX, also called the Fear Index, was up at levels of about 24. Meanwhile, let's look at the Nifty 50 heat map and try and see which are the sectors where there is some movement. And by all accounts, it seems that Reliance is absolutely flat this morning, the heavyweight in the Nifty 50 index, but a shade of green visible in the non-energy minerals. And you're talking about the steel and aluminium companies this morning. Stocks of Ultratech Cement are up about 2.5%. Meanwhile, you've also got Tata Steel, JSW Steel, both in the green. In fact, JSW Steel is up about 1%. The IT stock is pretty much flat, barring Tech Mahindra and Infosys, with shades of red creeping in the first few minutes of trading. Meanwhile, ONGC is down about 1.6, 1.7% or so in trade this morning. That's the view coming in on the Nifty 50 heat map. We've also got the banking and financial services index, which again has been dampened by the FII outflows, but we are seeing that this morning there are mixed cues coming from the BFSI space. HDFC Bank is up about 0.5 percentage point. ICICI Bank down about 1/3 percentage point. Kranti Batini joins us this morning. Kranti Batini, equity strategist at Wealth Security. Thank you so much for your time. Markets were expected to open a little better this morning, with the Nifty indicating a gap up opening. But what we're seeing is absolutely flat trade, no real movement. In fact, markets opened in the red and have barely slipped into the green. What are you making of the investor sentiment at this point?
There is a complete risk aversion we are witnessing, Karthik, at this point of time. Investors are wary about the market at this point of time, trying to be on sidelines in the medium to short term because there is no clarity. The news has been so much volatile. That's the reason. And look at the crude oil prices, how volatile in the last 10 trading sessions. Today is the 16th day of the war. So there is nobody, there are a lot of uncertainty is emerging at this point of time. That is the reason some kind of a aversion towards the equity market at this point of time for the most of the investors. That's creating the low volumes in the market, and also we are seeing these kind of a moves in the opening of the trade. We need to see how the day is going to progress in the next couple of hours. That's where we can see some kind of a clear directional moves to the market.
Of course, wait a couple of days, if not a couple of weeks, depending on how long this conflict in West Asia continues to rage on. Meanwhile, stocks on the move in the positive territory this morning seem to be a mixed bag, but the momentum really coming, in fact, the bullishness of investors really coming in for the non-energy minerals. For some reason, we are seeing a fairly handsome uptake in steel stocks, aluminium stocks and cement stocks this morning. And of course, a little bit of gains even in some banking stocks like HDFC Bank and SBI. I want to first talk about JSW Steel, Tata Steel. Both the stocks are up. In fact, Tata Steel up almost 0.9% right now as we speak. JSW Steel up about 1.3%. Ultratech Cement is up about 3% or so. What is moving some sort of momentum in favor of this particular sector, the non-energy minerals, Kranti?
Karthik, if we see the main focus at this point of time going ahead is government infrastructure spending that's expected to go up. Normally, ahead of the summer, we tend to see some kind of up moves in sectors like cement and as well as metals are concerned. That's where we are witnessing at this point of time. These are the sectors expected to do well in the next coming couple of quarters. That's where we are witnessing some kind of a bounce back and buying interest is emerging in the cement as well as metals are concerned. Both are by and large domestic oriented sectors, and they are much more insulated from the external shocks in the medium to short term. That's where we are witnessing some kind of a buying interest in this sector.
Is that the reason you would also attribute to the positive movement you're seeing in ITC and Bajaj Auto? Again, inward-looking sectors, domestic sectors, fundamentals continue to be strong, no real fears of inflation or economic slowdown at the moment, at least till as long as the government continues to protect, passing on the rising fuel prices to consumers?
Yeah, absolutely, Karthik. That is the reason we are witnessing some kind of a buying interest that's emerging with respect to the domestic-oriented sectors. As you rightly mentioned, ITC, despite of the recent worries on the GST and even the healthcare, this sector has been resilient. And from the time, apart from barring the recent war crisis, but the time the tariffs are announced, from the time the domestic healthcare sector has been doing very well. So the domestic oriented sectors have been quite resilient in these kind of markets, Karthik.
All right. Okay. But look at the power producers and the power distributors. That is where the pain seems to be coming from this morning, Kranti. Again, everybody understands that the conflict in West Asia is likely to spike up and keep fuel prices elevated at elevated levels. Now, whether it settles at 105 or 110 or 150, I think nobody really knows for sure right now. But input cost for power producers is going up, and that is something which is likely to reflect negatively on their bottom lines, isn't it?
Yeah, we have witnessed some kind of a buying interest in these sectors in the last week because of the expected demand for power is concerned, but as well as it's going to dent on the margins in terms of the raw materials are concerned, that can be naphtha, and the fuel is concerned. That's where we are witnessing some kind of a consolidation in the stock in the medium to short term.
All right. I want to focus specifically on the BFSI sector now, and this BFSI sector has been pretty much volatile given the exodus of FIIs that we saw last week. Now, today we are getting mixed views from here, Kranti. While stocks of HDFC Bank and SBI are both up more than 1% in trade, we are seeing some weakness emerge out of ICICI Bank and Axis Bank. Is there a sectoral sort of headwind which is looking more so towards some private sector banks like ICICI and Axis Bank as opposed to SBI and potentially even HDFC Bank?
One thing is market has been waiting, okay, how this entire episode is going to play in the next coming quarters. The main reason the banking is under pressure is because of the clear-cut selling by the foreign portfolio investors. But in the medium to short term, the DIS have been the net buyers every day in the trade. And going ahead, how the credit growth is going to be, that is extremely crucial. So we can see some kind of a divergence and some kind of a cherry picking in these stocks, as you mentioned rightly, HDFC and SBI is concerned. But we need to wait and watch for some more time how the results are going to be. But we are seeing some kind of a bottom fishing in the banking and financial service space is concerned. Still, the main key impact for the banking and financial services is FII selling is clearly creating some pressure in the medium to short term.
Right, so it is FII pressure which is weighing down on the BFSI stocks. I also want to talk about the oil marketing companies, and of course we have been keeping a close track on how prices are moving in this particular sector. And again this morning I think the selling just doesn't seem to end as far as the top three Indian Oil Corporation, BPCL and HPCL are concerned. Even this morning those stocks are down on average about 3% or so. We understand, Kranti, that there is obviously a lot of pressure on the bottom line of these companies, but remember, these companies already also have fairly strong balance sheets and P&L statements, given the fact that when crude oil was actually lower than $60 a barrel, the sort of reduction in retail price was not really passed on to the consumers, even though the government was collecting something called the windfall tax from these companies back then. Overall, how stressed are their books likely to be if this conflict continues to be a long one?
I think if the oil prices are going to be at elevated levels, above $100, definitely it's going to create some kind of impact. As you rightly mentioned, they have strong balance sheets. They witnessed the markets and witnessed the oil prices around $150 per barrel in 2007 and 8 kind of a time. And there have been volatile movements for these stocks. And for oil prices of these companies are concerned. As we are heading to the election season in the 5 states, whether the oil prices are going to be increased or not, these oil marketing companies have to bear that pressure of the increased oil prices. That's going to create some kind of a sentimental impact and real impact on the profits of these companies in the medium to short term. So that's where we are witnessing at this point of time pressure on these companies and selling pressure on these companies in the medium to short term. They're strong businesses, but medium to short term they need to feel this pressure.
All right, there is going to be short-term pressure, long-term, of course, as always, is a question of how long the war is going to last. Finally, I also want to take a look at the logistics sector. And, you know, this is a sector, again, a sector which is very, very directly impacted by the longer routes and in some cases the restrictions on shipping lines across the country and beyond. In fact, not in the country, but beyond the country in other parts of the world, not just to the Gulf, but even shipments going to Europe and US largely restricted with the Strait of Hormuz being closed. I'm looking at stocks of Concur. I'm looking at GE Ship, which is the biggest hit, in fact, down about 4.5% or so. And even companies like Blue Dart down about 1.5%. But on the contrary, the airline, Interglobe Aviation, Indigo stocks are up about 1.5%. So have you seen the worst of Indigo's decline as far as at least, you know, the conflict in the Gulf is concerned? And have investors already priced in the movements of Indigo? And more importantly, the logistics sector, are they likely to remain battered?
Indigo has been quite resilient, Karthik. Even we witnessed the exit of the CEO. But they have promptly announced the rise in the fuel surcharge that can withstand their margins in the medium to short term. But we need to see how the demand is going to be. Is there any postponement of travel or what kind of impact it's going to have on the demand? It is premature to say. By and large, they made a timely move of increasing adding the fuel surcharge. That will give some kind of a recovery for the margins in the medium to short term. But we need to see how the demand is going to pan out in the next coming couple of weeks. That is extremely crucial. The remaining logistics stocks are concerned. We are witnessing some kind of this has become a news-driven activity. So some kind of a high volatility we are witnessing in logistics stocks in the medium to short term. We need to see how this entire episode is going to be, because there are some kind of a favorable news sometimes and some kind of a adverse news. The source of information has been so much volatile that has been creating some kind of impact on these stocks in the medium to short term.
All right, of course, and you mentioned the fuel surcharge, of course, pain for flyers and passengers, but definitely some gains visible for investors when it comes to the Indigo stock. Meanwhile, remember, Indigo happens to be pretty much the only sort of listed company in India in the airline space which is impacted by the war in West Asia. Meanwhile, on the screen right now, Sensex and Nifty absolutely flat trade in the first about 15 to 20 minutes odd of markets opening. No movement at all in Nifty 50 and Sensex, pretty much stuck at those levels of about 23,137 for Nifty 50. Sensex absolutely flat at about 24,500. Well, Kranti, not sure if investors are liking what they're seeing on the screen, but unfortunately that's all we have time for this morning. Thank you so much. As always, pleasure having you here with us on News9. And with that, we will slip into another very short break. Coming up on the other side of the break, we will bring you the much-awaited Oscar winner list. Who are the ones who are bagging away all the trophies at the Academy Awards? We'll bring you that on the other side of the break. You're watching Morning Brief at 9.
Someone to bring your vision into reality. When human vision meets artificial intelligence, storytelling enters new territory. Two distinct categories: brand films, short films, evaluated by the best of the best. Seen by those who shape the industry. Rewarded with a 10 lakh rupee prize pool. Celebrated at What India Thinks Today, Delhi.
AI Squared Awards, where artificial intelligence meets artistic imagination.
Welcome back. You're watching News9. This is Morning Brief at 9. Well, the much anticipated meeting between top leaders of United States and China may not see the light of the day so soon. US President Donald Trump has said that his planned summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping could be delayed as the Iran war dominates global diplomacy right now. Trump said the meeting in Beijing may get postponed as Washington seeks China's help in reopening the Strait of Hormuz, a key global oil route disrupted by the war. In an interview with the Financial Times, the US President said that the United States would like clarity from Beijing on Hormuz before moving ahead with the summit. Now, the comments come as US and Chinese economic officials met in Paris for a new round of talks aimed at stabilizing their fragile trade truce. The discussions likely covered US tariffs, Chinese exports of rare earth minerals, American technology controls, and Chinese purchases of US agricultural goods. But analysts say prospects for a major breakthrough remain limited as Washington's attention is increasingly focused on the escalating conflict with Iran. Ukraine has rejected pressure from some European countries to reopen a key Russian oil pipeline. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that depends to restart the Druzhba pipeline, which carries Russian oil through Ukraine, amount to blackmail. Now, the Soviet-era pipeline was damaged in a Russian strike in January, and Kyiv says repairs could take up to 6 weeks. Now, Hungary and Slovakia, which rely heavily on the pipeline for energy supplies, have warned they could block European Union aid to Ukraine if it is not reopened quickly. Zelensky said restoring Russian oil flows while Ukraine continues to face the war would undermine Kyiv's position. The dispute comes as global energy markets tighten following the war involving the United States, Israel and Iran. Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has called Russia as the biggest security threat in the Arctic region. He made the remarks after meeting Nordic leaders in Oslo, where the countries agreed to deepen cooperation on defense and military industrial production. Carney said the growing Russian presence in the Arctic represents the most significant physical security risk to the region. The meeting comes as Canada works to strengthen partnerships with Nordic nations and other global powers.
The biggest security threat, in the Arctic is Russia. It is welcome, arguably overdue, but welcome that now NATO is focusing increasingly on Arctic security and Arctic sentry. Obviously, is a manifestation of that. It needs to be fully developed, and what you're hearing from all of us is the commitment in order to do that.
Meanwhile, the United States and Japan are strengthening energy cooperation as the West Asia war drives a global supply crisis. Washington and Tokyo signed new energy agreements during the Indo-Pacific Energy Security Ministerial and Business Forum held in Tokyo. The forum aims to boost investment and cooperation in energy security across Asia. The push comes as countries scramble to secure supplies following the war involving the United States, Israel and Iran. Earlier this week, the International Energy Agency approved a record release of 400 million barrels of oil from strategic reserves to stabilize global markets. Now, Japan, which imports about 90% of its oil from West Asia, said it will contribute by releasing around 80 million barrels from its national and private reserves starting March 16th. New data shows the U.S. economy slowed more than previously estimated at the end of last year. Government figures show fourth quarter economic growth was revised lower, reflecting weaker consumer spending and softer business investment. The revision highlights signs of cooling momentum in the world's largest economy. Take a look.
U.S. economic growth slowed more sharply than initially thought in the fourth quarter, amid downward revisions to consumer spending and business investment. An updated estimate from the U.S. Commerce Department on Friday showed that gross domestic product increased at an annual rate of 0.7% last quarter. That's down from an initial GDP estimate of 1.4%. Fourth quarter GDP growth was weighed down by last year's 43-day government shutdown, while underlying demand across the economy was also weaker. Meanwhile, the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, the Federal Reserve's key inflation gauge, rose 0.3% in January. Excluding volatile food and energy costs, the PCE price index gained 0.4% in January, putting the annual core inflation rate at 3.1%. That's well above the Federal Reserve's annual 2% target. Friday's inflation data dates back to before the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran, which has caused surging oil prices and reignited fears of rising inflation or stagflation. As a result, most investors have moved their expectations for an interest rate cut from the Fed from June to September.
Volkswagen has regained the top spot in China's auto market. That's right, the German car maker led vehicle sales in the first 2 months of 2026, reclaiming dominance in the world's largest auto market. Now, Toyota also regained ground, with both companies overtaking local electric vehicle champion brands in China. The shift comes as subsidies for electric vehicles in China begin to fade, reshaping competition in the market.
Volkswagen reclaimed car sales dominance in China, the world's largest auto market, in the first 2 months of this year. Toyota also regained ground, with both overtaking local electric vehicle champion BYD, which fell to fourth amid fading subsidies for greener cars. VW's Chinese joint ventures with Ford and SAIC helped a combined 13.9% share of the country's passenger vehicle market in sales terms, followed by Geely with 13.8% and Toyota's joint ventures with GAC and Ford. The data on Friday came from the Chinese Passenger Car Association. VW had previously struggled to catch up with local rivals in EVs. But the comeback came as purchase tax exemptions on electric cars expired and Beijing scaled back subsidies for trading in EVs. VW said on Friday it's begun mass production of its first model co-developed with Chinese partner XPeng. Other data on Friday showed global EV registrations fell 11% in February, dragged by China's largest sales drop since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's also as governments worldwide hit the brakes on policies designed to encourage purchases of electric cars.
And moving on now from rising energy prices to central bank dilemmas, the global economy faces a crucial week ahead. The war in West Asia continues to drive volatility in oil markets, pushing up energy costs across the world. At the same time, central banks are grappling with the difficult balance between controlling inflation and supporting economic growth. Here's a look at the key stories shaping business and finance in the week ahead.
From war in the Middle East driving up energy prices to the same putting central banks in a sticky spot. These are the stories to watch in business and finance in the coming week. Hopes of a quick resolution to the war with Iran seem to be dwindling. Tankers are on fire in the Gulf, there's damage to oil loading and transport facilities across the Middle East, and Iran's new leader is calling for the Strait of Hormuz to remain closed. So, traders are starting to accept that even if there's a ceasefire soon, it could be some time before oil and gas flows return to normal. In the meantime, investors have ripped up assumptions about inflation and interest rates for this year. February's surprisingly weak U.S. jobs report supports the case for further rate cuts that President Donald Trump has long urged. However, the Middle East conflict complicates the picture. The Federal Reserve is expected to hold rates steady on Wednesday, and Fed funds futures indicators have tempered expectations for rate cuts this year. That could potentially set the Fed up for a fresh clash with Trump in the months ahead. It's a big day for Europe on Thursday, with Euro area, Swiss, and UK central banks meeting. Surging oil prices put import-dependent Europe in a tough spot. Markets are pricing in rate hikes later this year from the European Central Bank and the Swiss National Bank, while rate cuts from the Bank of England have been rapidly priced out. The Reserve Bank of Australia and the Bank of Japan are the only two in the G10 in interest rate hiking mode. Expectations for Japan's next rate increase have been thrown into disarray, as a prolonged spike in energy prices could deliver a double whammy of low growth and high inflation to the import-reliant economy. For the RBA, markets price in an over 70% chance for a quarter-point hike on Tuesday.
And on to the Academy Awards now. One battle after another triumphed at the Oscars on Sunday, winning 6 awards, including the coveted Best Picture statuette, besting Sinners in a thrilling finale to one of the 5 most competitive award seasons in recent years. Now, director Paul Thomas Anderson personally won 3 Oscars, the first for his career for his political thriller that tackles the hot-button issues of immigration raids and white supremacy. Ryan Coogler's Sinners, a bluesy vampire fable that offers a mediation on America's difficult racial history, had come into the evening with a record-tying 16 nominations. It left with 4 awards, including Best Original Screenplay for Coogler and Best Actor for Michael B. Jordan, who plays gangster twin brothers Smoke and Stack, seeking their fortune in the Seagirt South. Now, it perhaps is the latest surprising award of the evening. Jessie Buckley won Best Actress for her portrayal of William Shakespeare's heartbroken wife navigating the loss of their son in Hamlet. Now, Norwegian family drama Sentimental Value was named the Best International Feature. And finally, at the recently concluded Silver Jubilee edition of TERI's World Sustainability Development Summit here in New Delhi, Joschen Flashbarth, the state secretary in the German Federal Ministry of Environment, Nature Conservation, Nuclear Safety and Consumer Protection, spoke about how multilateralism has become a force of hope towards solving the global climate challenges. Now, gone are the times when each country doing its bit towards decarbonizing the environment was enough to protect the planet from the catastrophic effects of global warming. Now, here is an excerpt from his address at the event.
Thanks, Ambassador. Dear colleagues here on the podium, dear colleagues and friends here in the room, happy to be here. First of all, congratulations to the Silver Jubilee of the World Sustainable Summit here in Delhi. Really pleasure to be here in this room again. Look, a couple of years, let's say 10 years ago, I even wouldn't have understood what the headline of multilateralism as a force of hope would mean. Now I understand. The world has changed tremendously. Multilateralism for some countries, luckily only a few, is not a priority. On the contrary, they are attacking it. As you addressed my country and Europe, and I'm happy here to be among many countries from many continents that are committed to multilateralism. And actually, thinking about it seriously, we have no other choice. Even children could understand that focus on your own country will not solve the global challenges. And we were speaking about climate. Thanks for the applause you were spending to us in Europe. Still, we have some steps to go. But it's more than that. This year we have all three Rio conferences, the one on climate in Antalya together with Australia, the one on biodiversity in Yerevan, and the one on desertification, highly underestimated in its relevance, by the way, the CCD in Mongolia. And it's also beyond the green agenda, the global environmental agenda. We are only 4 years away from 2030, our wonderful 2030 agenda on sustainable development. We are still lacking behind on fighting hunger and poverty, providing access to education, ensuring gender equality, reducing the huge gap in wealth, and at the same time looking at all the global public goods and a joint family. So we are not in a position to criticize if a country decides to leave whatever institution in the world. It's not desired by us, but every country can decide. What we criticize and what we do not accept is that one country is putting pressure on other countries. And let me name the organization, it's the IMO. What we saw there was a huge majority among countries with very, very different perspectives, agreeing that we have to decarbonize our shipping lines. And there was already a majority for it, and it was under attack. It was under attack to single countries, small island countries, as you mentioned correctly, being anyway under the highest pressure with global climate change. Also to individuals to change the position of their countries. This is something we cannot accept. This is something that destroys the world community in its essence. Ladies and gentlemen, there is another aspect that I want to mention in my brief address here. And that is, this is organized by Terry. And Terry is about knowledge. It's about fact-based. And I've been many times when I visited Delhi to Terry, and I always enjoyed the excellence and the immense know-how at this think tank. That is shared with other think tanks in the world. But this is also under threat. and for very good reasons. Our Brazilian friends created in Belém at the Climate COP an alliance against misinformation and fake news in the field of global public goods. We luckily joined. We have to fight against it, because if you don't have the substance, what is right and what is wrong, if leaders in the world can lie whatever they want, then there is no basis for true multilateralism, and honestly there is no basis to make progress for the world. So finally, coming to the end, you mentioned that I've been here in this room before at the last Raisina dialogues. The next will come. Those two dialogues, the one here organized by Terry, stands for fact-based progress, and the one on Raisina standing for multilateralism. This is a room where friends gather. And just to define what, in my view, are friends. Friendship is not defined that you share the same opinion. Friendship is defined that you are able to listen, that you try to understand, that you value the argument of others, and that you are driven by the joint endeavor to make the world a little bit better. Thanks a lot.
This season, we're going to explore the unknown sides and destinations of Spain.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9, English news as it should be.
Hello and a very warm welcome. I'm Nancy Bora and you're watching News 9. Headlines first. Fire breaks out in the ICU of SCB hospital in Cuttack in Odisha, claiming at least 10 lives. Odisha CM announces rupees 25 lakh ex gratia compensation for the victims' families. Iran's injured new leader flown to Moscow for leg surgery after Putin personally offered help as death rumors swirl. Donald Trump demands 7 nations form a coalition to police Iran's Strait of Hormuz and send warships to secure the vital oil shipping route. President Donald Trump says US is in talks with Iran, though Tehran is not yet ready to reach a deal. Iran denies that any diplomatic discussions are ongoing as the conflict enters its 3rd week. Iran launches dancing missile, Sejil missile in retaliatory strikes for the first time since war began. Drone attack sparks a major fire near Dubai International Airport. Flights are suspended. No injuries have been reported so far.
Fantastic.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu debunks death rumors with new video, says I am very much alive, shows his 5 fingers clearing the air on conspiracy.